And that is what it means to be triggered. When we talk about trigger, what we're saying is that your response in that moment is not just about that thing that happened in that moment. It's just that that thing that happened in the moment reminded your body and your nervous system about something that has happened in the past. I don't know if that makes sense, right? When we say that you have been triggered, right? When we say you have been triggered, what we're saying is, so if you say, oh, this a baby is crying and it's triggering you, it's making you uncomfortable, making you react, or your child is jumping up and down and playing, they might not even be doing it with any intention to upset you. They're just playing innocently as children in the background, and it just makes you upset, and then you find yourself shouting, right? And the common word we use in those kind of situations, or even let's even remove it from the let's even shift a bit from the parent-child relationship. It can be in your romantic relationship, it can be in your friendship, where somebody does something or somebody says something, and you just find out that you're so upset, so much so that when you finish that episode of tantrum or being upset, you realize that, oh my God, I might have overreacted. Why did I react that way? In most cases, we call that being triggered. And what that means is that your reaction is not commensurate to the action. That your reaction is not commensurate to what the person did. And when you react in those times, you if that happens to you very often, what you need to know, if you don't live with any other thing from this class, what you need to know is that if that is happening to you, then it's not about that incident, it's not about that event. It just means that that event is reminding your body, your nervous system, your alarm system about something that has happened before. And it may not be the same thing. So, as I'm saying it now, maybe many of you are thinking, oh, okay, what could this event be reminding my body of, or reminding my nervous system of? Many times it's not the same thing, right? But the way the nervous system works is it takes information based on feelings or based on the emotions that those experiences elicit. So if somebody says something that made you feel small or that made you feel incapable, I'm working, I'll be with you shortly. If somebody says something that makes you, please, thank you. If somebody says something that makes you feel small or makes you feel incapable, right? And that triggered you, what it means is that in the past, there has been instances that have made you feel small and made you feel incapable. So that's what your nervous system remembers. Your nervous system remembers that there's a time we have felt like this before and it didn't feel good. And what did we do that helped us stay safe or get back our control or control ourselves or manage ourselves in when this thing happened before? It's just like an alarm, it's just like a computer. It will search database. What did we do? How do we respond to this thing? How have you responded to this thing in the past when it happened? And for many people, it's either you fight, you flight, or you freeze, right? And many of these are like experiences that have happened in our childhood. So if in your childhood you are not allowed to speak up, for example, you are not allowed, you never expressed yourself, right? It will make you feel like you don't have a voice. It will make you feel like you're powerless. It will make you feel like you don't have control over things that concern you, right? So fast forward to now, if your child at any point with any behavior by any way makes you feel that same way, makes you feel like I'm powerless, I don't know what to do right now, I don't even have control over this situation, you're going to react to protect yourself because that's the signal that your nervous system is giving you, right? And it's going to be one of the three responses, which is fight. So fight would be things like trying to be defensive, trying to shout, trying to raise your voice. Flight would be something like being dismissive, trying to shut it down. So for example, if a child is crying, you just want to make it stop, right? Freeze will be something like zoning out. Like something is happening, like you're actually just zoning out. It's no, concern me. Like your children can be fighting in the background or arguing. You're just all zoned out. So it is many times connected to your nervous system. And when I say your nervous system, is just the memory bank of how you respond to stressful situations from the past. So it's what happened in your past, how you have handled stress in your past, what you have experienced in your past is still showing up in your present today. And I don't know if I have said a lot of jargon because I feel like I've said a lot of jargon, but did I make sense? Let me know that I made sense. I like to keep these things simple and conversational, but somehow I don't want to sound too scientific. But did that make sense to anybody? Did that explanation around what it means to be triggered, did it make sense to you? Please just if it did, use an emoji. You don't have to say anything. Just let me know that we're together and I'm not just talking. All right. One person. Only one person. Only one person.
Makes a lot of sense. I'm driving, so I can't type, but yeah.
All right. Thank you. All right. So that's the first thing, right? That's the first reason why we actually yell. I know a lot of us want to stop it, but we want to stop it by power. Like want to stop it by head knowledge, want to stop it by logic, but many times it's not the logic that will stop it. Is actually going back to the nervous system and retraining the nervous system because what you're experiencing now is a training that your nervous system got on how to respond to stressful situations. So you now have to go back and retrain your nervous system to remind it that actually what is happening now is not the same thing as what has happened in the past. We're safe, we're okay, we don't have to respond um we don't have to respond the way that we responded or we're used to responding. We can actually choose to respond differently. And why I'm saying this is like literally you have to understand that this is what is going on and you have to have this conversation with your nervous system. And then there are also somatic practices that you have to do to actually calm your nervous system, to continue to heal your nervous system. It's quite a journey. But it's a journey of healing that needs to happen if you really, really want to be centered and calm, right? And we also, y'all, remember when I started this conversation, I said it can be an external thing, it can be internal thing. But many times, even if it's an external thing, it's also linked to the capacity of, you know, that you have built internally. There, for example, all of us, if we were to measure our capacity to or the state of our nervous system, it would look different thing for different people. That's why you see one person, what it takes to get them heightened is different from what it takes to get another person heightened. That depends on the how in rest your nervous system is, right? Some people can be ticked off like easily. One small thing, they are in stress mode. Another person, it will take a little bit more to get them. Another person, it will take much more to get them. So it depends on how in rest your nervous system is. And it looks different for different people, depending on what you have been exposed to, depending on how stressful your life currently is or has been, depending on what level of trauma you have been exposed to in the past as well. So different thing depending on the journey of healing that you have been able to work, depending on what your routine is on a day-to-day that helps you stay grounded and stay centered. All of those things come into play, right? And yelling can also be because of, you know, now going to the external factors, overstimulation, right? Natural stress, you had a stressful day, you're sleep deprived, you're hungry, um, you know, their pressures, life pressures, you know, that's that can add, these are like external factors that can cause you to be triggered, right? It can also be because you don't have structure, right? Because I find that most times you get you're more on the edge if you're disorganized, right? So if you have a home where there is no structure, there is likely to be more yelling because it's not just you, it's also the kids not knowing what to do next or how things are working. Structure brings organization, and organization gives you a bit of flow, and it can help you manage yourself. It can also help the kids, manage themselves so that those things that trigger you to yell may not happen as often. So structure is really, really important. This one is a big one as well. Um, you yell because it is what you saw, right? So when we talk about mindset is, the way your mind has formed. You have been set in a way, right? So if you grew up seeing how children were addressed or how you were addressed, or in the environment where you grew up, this was how things were handled, and you don't have any other template for how things can be done, then you will do things how it has always been done. Even if internally you know that this is wrong, you will still do it because this is what you have seen. You know, that's how it's like a culture, right? This is how you do things. This is how your mother did things. This is how your aunties did things. This is how you grew up. And now you know that it's not working. You really don't like it. I know that, but then what do I do? Because I don't know differently. I haven't tried differently. Nobody has taught me differently. You know, you just do it by default because that's what comes naturally to you. We're now on a journey to actually learning. For many of us, that's the case. I don't know how many people that is maybe from my age and above who I will ask if they had actual parents who were not yellers or who were really, really conscious that would say yes to me. There are not many people. There were some, but there are not many people. So many of us saw that. And that's why I say that we're a generation of cycle breakers. We're the ones who are now saying, this thing, we do not like it, we do not enjoy it, we don't think it actually worked, and we want to do things differently. And if you're here, congratulations. Don't feel bad. I know that many times when we have some of this conversation, there's a bit of judgment where people feel like, oh, why can't I do things right? You're not alone. If you are here, you should be proud of yourself because that means you want to do things differently, right? Um, Another reason why we yell is because it works. It actually works, right? I mean, if your children are jumping all over the place and stressing you out, if you yelled out, they will stop. So it actually works and is like a quick fix to the problem that you want to solve. So why not? Many people will go to it. Many people will not have the patience to actually have the conversation or do the things or calm themselves down, to get their children to behave. So if it works, and then you use it. But we want to now consider, what does it do to our children? Does it really work in the long run, right? So if you want to shift from yelling to stop yelling, one of the things that you also need to do is to understand what it does to your children, because then that can be your motivation. When you understand that, oh, this thing has a long-term impact, this thing in the long run doesn't really work out well for myself and my children, then that can be like a bigger motivation to then help you stop, right? When you yell your child, the same thing that is happening to you now would happen to your child, because your child would probably still go into survival mode, right? Your child will go into that flight, fight, or freeze mode because when you yell in that moment, your child stops thinking. When you yell, your child's emotional brain is the one that you're activating. The thinking brain is not working. The emotional brain is the one that you're, because when you yell, your child forgets about what you're trying to teach them, and because there is fear in that moment, their motivation or their action in that moment is self-preservation. So they're in the fear mode, they're trying to protect themselves, they're in the emotional side of their brain. The thinking side of their brain takes backseat. So if that is a recurrent experience between you and your child, it affects their brain, it affects their learning, it affects, the development of their nervous system as well. So you want to think about, how much that is of an impact, and if it is really worth it in the long time, right? There is fear, there is shame, there is anger, there is shutdown, there is breakdown in relationship, right? As much as many of us will think, that, our children love us. Your children will love you regardless because you are their parent. You're also, if yelling is a recurrent experience between yourself and your child, they remember. They will always remember because there's a saying that people don't remember what you said to them, but how you made them feel, right? So if it is a recurrent experience, your child, regardless of how small they are, will just know that being around this person is not a pleasant experience. And that's not the position that you want to put your child in, because then what it means is that the slightest opportunity they get to create a distance between yourself and them, they will take it, right? Then you're also setting an example for your child, just like the example that was set to us. You're also setting an example for your child to say, this is how we respond when we're stressed out. This is what we do when we feel like people make mistake. We shout at them, we shame them for making mistakes. So they are also picking up that. They also try to lie to save themselves from that fear, that shame, and the pain that comes with that yelling. So there are other bad habits that might be a ripple effect of the fact that you are yelling at your child. They start to lie, they start to become secretive, and beyond that, their attachment is also affected. So this is how people grow to think that, especially when we do this thing that we do for our generation now, where we blow out on our children, we yell at them, but then we're so nice to them again because we want to make up for that yelling. So you finish yelling at your child, and then the next minute you're buying ice cream, you're buying things for them because you feel guilty, and you do not process that whole emotion with them. You do not talk through that behavior and your own behavior and come to a mutual understanding of what has happened and take responsibility for what you have done. You just go ahead and just, buy things for them to actually make up for that yelling. Then what you're actually messing up with your child's attachment, because subconsciously what you're teaching your child is that love and pain can coexist. And for many people in our age bracket and beyond, millennials and above, who have existed in abusive relationship, some of them, this is the really root cause of it, because of the conditioning that many times love comes with pain. So it's okay for someone to love me so deeply and also cause me pain. It's not a conscious thing, right? It's not a conscious thing. It's a subconscious brain wiring. And that is something that we don't want to give to our children or pass down to our children, where they feel like it's okay for love to come with pain. It's okay for the person who cares for you or who should be your primary carer to also be the person who is inflicting pain on you, who is bullying you. Because what happens in childhood doesn't end in childhood. what happens in childhood, the habits, the conditioning, the ideas, the mindset that people form in childhood, they take into adulthood. So the concept of relationship that we're teaching our children, even if it's in the context of parent and child relationship, they will take it into other relationship, even romantic relationship. So if the concept of love that they get in this relationship that we're forming with them is that it's okay for love and pain to coexist, it's okay for the person who loves me to bully me, then they're also gonna take that into other relationship. So you see how far-reaching this is. With this understanding, you need to know that yeah, like it should be a good motivation for you to say, I don't want to do this to my child. I don't want my child to form this mindset. I don't want my child to become like this. So I need to work on me to become a better person so that this will stop and this will end, and things will be better. And I would tell you, it is not a 1 day journey, especially if you're starting with every other challenges of life, right? um it is not a 1 day journey. It's a journey that it's progress, and it is consistency, and it is commitment that would help you come to that point where you say, okay, I can see how far I've come, I can see where I was, and I can see where I am now, and it is progress. Please, on this journey, I also want you to be kind to yourself, right? Be kind to yourself. Before I get into, so what do we do now? Do we have any questions so far? Any question, any reflection? I'd like to hear your voices. Mm. You people are too quiet too. What's going on?
Yes, I have a question.
Okay, please go ahead.
Okay, so thank you so much for this time. It's really insightful, like it's really relatable. So there was a point you mentioned something around you one being emotional intent. Probably you already shouted at the kid or at the
Mm-hmm,
children at the time. Then you go ahead to just because you felt guilty and you felt you shouldn't have done that,
mm-hmm,
you go ahead to start buying things, just arguments, instead of processing the emotion. So you mean should it have been okay after probably shouting,
mm-hmm,
you you realize that you've yelled at the kids
mm-hmm,
and you felt like okay, this was wrong. I shouldn't have yelled. What they've done is not something that warrants this kind of attitude.
mm-hmm.
Should the behavior, I mean, should the response have been, oh, I'm sorry for shouting. I'm tired and I just needed, like, you just talk about it with them, like, okay, I shouldn't have yelled at you guys. I'm sorry for doing this, blah, 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 and just talk it through. Should that be, have been the right response as against just going to buy things?
Yes, you should always have a repair, right? You should always have a
Mm,
repair. And it's in that repair. Repair is so powerful that it's in that repair that you build accountability. And that repair would be a motivation because you will get tired of saying sorry. If you repair, if you start your journey and you start to do repair where after you have an explosion, when everywhere is calm, you're able to call your child and say, I'm sorry, I overreacted, I shouldn't have done that. And it's not just taking the responsibility. You apologize, then you can unpack what happened, so that there would be a bit of like commitment on both sides to say, next time this is what my expectations are, right? and I don't want to yell, like kind of like hold each other accountable for what has happened. But ultimately you apologize. Like when I started this conversation, your child is not responsible for your, regardless of what they have done, they're not responsible for your reaction. No matter how bad an incident is, there can be an alternative way of responding. The only time yelling is actually like accepted is in the moments of danger. Yeah, and I know it's like it's not easy, and I know it's not easy, right? But your child is not responsible for your explosions. So yes, you take account, you take responsibility and be accountable for how you responded, but also hold each other accountable in terms of depending on what has happened, the behavior, right, that has caused that response and how that behavior can be improved on. So that is you actually teaching. That is you actually building skill in your child so that they can behave better. And they can only learn that thing you're trying to teach them in moments of calm. The brain doesn't learn when it is stressed or when it is agitated. So the point I'm trying to make is if you do this very often, it can be the sole motivation for you to actually stop yelling. Because who likes to say sorry every time? You will get tired of saying sorry that you then start holding yourself back because you don't want to say sorry, because you don't want to always keep apologizing, keep apologizing, right? So, yes, repair is always good. And beyond that, it's also good for your child to integrate the experience. Because what happens when you don't repair is that you have left it open for your child to make any meaning out of it. And they can, the minds of children, their mind is wild, so you may not, because they don't tell you, doesn't mean that they don't make form their own perception and meaning from that experience. And those perception over time then go ahead to form beliefs that drive a person's life. And let me explain this for you. So for example, if you shout at a child now because they spilled water, you shouted at them because they spilled water. You just want them to clean the water, and then you didn't explain anything to them. They will leave that experience. So maybe I'm not good at anything. Maybe I'm so clumsy. Maybe it's bad to make mistake. You see, this is the thoughts that go through their head. And if that be a recurrent experience where anytime they make a mistake, they're shouted upon, what then goes on in their head is that it's bad to make mistakes. So anytime I make a mistake, there's always shouting, there's always shame, there's always pain. This person then grows into somebody who is afraid of making mistakes, somebody who is so afraid of making mistakes that they may not even try because they're afraid of what might happen when mistakes happen, right? So that's how beliefs are formed. So that repair helps you integrate the experience for your child so that you don't leave it open for them to. Sometimes it could be that the thought is, maybe my mommy doesn't love me. Maybe my daddy doesn't love me. I don't think they love me enough. And then they carry that and it forms a belief in them. Oh, maybe they love my brother more than me. That's why they're always shouting at me and they don't always shout at my brother like that. So you don't want to leave it open. Repair helps you integrate that experience for your child. So yes, to answer your question, yes, for every time that happens, you should repair. You should have a conversation about it.
All right,
Um,
thank you.
yeah, somebody in the chat says, what about a child who is quick to say I'm sorry, but will do that thing? In fact, with some cases, yes, there are children like that, but it's also your responsibility to say, right, I hear you, you're sorry, but sorry doesn't solve a thing. Can we sit down and talk about what has happened? And then you unpack it. What happened? What happened before? How did we come about this? What were you thinking before this happened? Right? So children can be impulsive, they don't understand the extent or the consequences of their choices. but it's our responsibility to actually sit them down and have those conversations that help them see and paint pictures. So with children, you have to paint pictures of what can happen because they're thinking in the moment, they're thinking out of excitement. They just want to do what comes into their head. So you sit them down and paint pictures of what can go wrong. And for me, I will paint, the worst case scenario, paint different versions of the pictures. And I'm not saying that you do this once and then your child automatically becomes a child who will do everything you want. And no, this is an ongoing, like it's a job. Like it's something you have to keep doing and keep doing and keep doing. And they would eventually get it. They would eventually get it. It's if parenting there's no quick fix. There's nothing that you say, oh, just do this once or do this ABC, and then your child will just become this adult that just sits still and does what you want and everything. There's not. They'll still go through the process of being children, of being messy, of making mistakes. But you want to use every opportunity to build skill, to build brain power, to build thinking capacity, and it all stacks up eventually. Don't say when they are old. It is all these conversations that you're having that you might not even be seeing the effect, quote and unquote, but it's stacking up. It's stacking up. It would those conversations will add up eventually. And that's why they say, if you're a Christian, they say train up a child in a way that they should go. And they did not just, if you read that passage very well, it did not just say, train up a child in a way that they should go and they will not depart from it. It says, train up a child in a way that they should go. And when they are old, because there is a time for learning to happen, you must give space and time for learning to happen. So learning must happen, right? And I'm saying this because when you start this journey, it might feel like, oh, it's not working. All this talk is not working. All this gentle parenting is not working. Let me just give one backhand slap. Let me just raise my voice. And no, it's working, not just as fast as you want it to work, but it works. Focus on yourself, right? Now, don't focus on trying to correct and correct and correct. That is the wrong thing to focus on. You will, but the first thing to focus on your capacity to actually remain calm in the heat of the moment. That is what you should focus on, because if you're able to get that one right, children will still be children, but then you have the capacity to be able to handle what they're throwing at you and be able to handle it in a way that is empowering for yourself and for them as well. So that's where the focus should be, not on the child's behavior initially. We will address the behavior, but how are we addressing the behavior? And how are you able to manage yourself to even address the behavior effectively? That's the main thing, right? So what do we do? I will start from the simplest thing that you can start doing today. The first thing, right, that you can start doing if you want to,
I
like I
have a
told you.
question. Sorry, before you do what do you do? I don't
Okay.
know if it's okay. I just don't want
Yeah.
to move to the next thing without. Yeah. So my question is that you said something about when he's old, he's not, he doesn't depart from it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think my question is, what's like, how long do you give yourself before you feel like, oh, this thing you're doing is effective or not?
I can't hear you.
It's because
I couldn't hear you.
yes,
You
I'm
broke.
trying
You're
not to
breaking up.
shout so that they don't hear me.
This
Okay,
okay.
can you hear me now?
Mm-hmm.
I was saying that how long does it take, or how long will you give yourself before, because sometimes it's also good to sit down and measure what you're doing and see if it's effective or not. So
Mm-hmm.
how long do you what's the amount of grace period that you give yourself to say that, oh, okay, this thing looks like it's working, or oh, this thing doesn't look like it's working, let me change strategy and things like that. Is it a lifetime wait of when is old will not depart from it kind of conversation? Or is there like an actual time frame you look at to say, oh, this is effective or this is not effective?
So it depends on what you're trying to, it depends on, if you give me a scenario that would help me, right? So for example, if my goal is that I want to stop yelling, right? That is a lifelong journey. That is your responsibility. That is something you have to work on. But if you're saying, right, how do I know that this my not yelling is helping me and my child, right? Um, what then would be the, so if you're saying because you said how do I know and then what to change my strategy, what then would be your next strategy? Is it to return back to yelling? I don't know if you're getting what I mean or what I'm trying to clarify,
I
right?
think I think my response to that would be that yelling is a response.
Mm-hmm.
It's not something that happens in itself. And
Mm-hmm.
in trying to stop yelling, I think it's also important to look at the things that causes the triggers or the triggers
Mm-hmm.
and all of those things. And so that's what I'm looking at it from. I'm looking at it from in trying to fix those triggers, for example, to say, okay, maybe you're correcting one particular thing 32 times, they're not taking correction and all of that. And those are the kind of things that triggers yelling and all of those things. And so I'm looking at it from the point of it so you're trying conversations, you're trying repeated instructions, yada yada yada, just to make sure that the person is listening and becoming better and and more let me not say compliant, but becoming better, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then it doesn't look like it is working. It doesn't look like the constant conversation. In fact, as a matter of fact, it begins to get to a point where they know that you always come back to repair. And so all of those repair periods or whatever begins to look like they can use those instances as manipulative. I don't get into that right now, but like they already understand the cycle, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so you now sit down and question yourself, is this thing really working or is it not? And I know that again, all of these things, patience, and to be able to get the outcome you require is patience. But that's the where my question is. For how long do you do all that and you're not seeing the desired change in the child? Like, do you understand
Um,
what I'm saying? So it's not a matter of, oh,
yes,
you
I
want
get,
to
I
go
get,
back to yelling.
I get what you mean now, right? So when we say have conversation, when we say repair, right, and we're gonna have conversations around discipline, we're not saying have open-ended, no discipline, no consequences, right? That's a future conversation to have because you also have to have, there should be natural consequences that come with behavior, right? Where you don't even have to yell, but I mean, you did this, and this is the outcome of what you have done. Deal with it. So, for example, if I've told you, don't play rough with that thing, don't play rough with that thing, and you're playing rough with it and it breaks, then you have to live with that thing for as long as I desire. That's a natural consequence, right? Then there's also consequence that you put into place as well, which is maybe if we do this thing or if we don't do XYZ, then this is what is going to happen. And you put your feet down and you're putting those consequences in place. Consequences teach people that when we behave like this, this is what happens. And if we don't want that thing to happen, we need to adjust. That is one, right? So, to answer your question, I can't put a timeline to it, but I'll say you will keep on doing what you're doing until you see the desired result. The desired result will happen, right? One thing that could happen is that maybe it's not happening as fast as you want it, or maybe your your expectations are not real. And when I say your expectations are not real, so for example, if you also understand the personality of your child or the needs of your child. So let me digress into neurodivergent, right? If you have a neurodivergent child, your expectation will not be real for you to expect that, let's say, neurodivergent ADHD or some form of, you know, hyperactivity, your expectation for that child to be calm, calculated, and sitting still will likely never really happen the way that you want it to happen. So your expectations should be managed, and your strategy should involve meeting their needs in terms of movement, right? Or in terms of visual chats instead of having conversation, right? In terms of organization, helping them with sequence, with this is what happens now, this is what will happen next, and that will involve a lot of talking. With in terms of timers, giving them timers, right? So all of this will come into place to determine what outcomes will look like per child based on the child's needs, based on the child's personalities, and it's just really holistic. So we're not just saying, oh, because we're saying don't yell and repair, then that means your home will be a wild house where children just call the shots and do what they want to do and then manipulate you. No, there would be consequences that would be put in place that they know that when this happens, this is what the outcome is. Another problem that we have is that many times we don't even put our feet down to follow through with the consequences. We give up so easily that that's when they now manipulate us. Because sometimes again, the consequences is discomforting for us. So for example, if I put a consequence in place and my 8-year-old who is very, very sensitive is crying, he can cry for 1 hour. So for many parents, they get uncomfortable with that cry that they just give in. And this issue with children and manipulation is really about who wears the other person out first. So if they don't wear you out the first time, they don't wear you out the second time, they don't wear you out consistently, they will give up because they realize that my cry is not doing anything. My this one is not making mommy budge. They will relax when you tell them something. They will like I'm the strict one in the home. So when I say something, my children know that if you cry from now till next tomorrow, I love you. I totally, totally love you. You can come and lie down with me. I will hug you. I will tell you sorry, but we are not if I say we're not doing that thing, we're not doing it. My husband is the opposite because he cannot deal with the cry. He will just be like, I beg people should just go and take it. Right. So we have to put our feet down and be the one to wear them out. And then when they learn it, they would start to adjust to what you're trying to say and what you're trying to teach them. So I can't say about timeline, but I can say yes, you can adapt your strategy. You can pay attention to the child in front of you. You can try different things and see what works for you. And but you don't stop until you see the outcome. And in the outcome or your desired outcome, in what that will look like, you have to be realistic based on the age of the child, based on the personality of the child, based on the need of the child, and make accommodation for those. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Yeah. And Mrs. BC, you had your hand up.
Yes, I just wanted, you said most of the things I wanted to say regarding the question that each child differs, so you have to look at that. That's very, very important. And
Mm,
then another thing I feel we can use to measure if something is working is we use ourselves as like a yardstick. You can rate yourself too on how calmer you are getting as the years. So that's I think that's that your calmness, your patience will
mm-hmm.
also it will help you to be able to put your feet down, to be able to actually do what is necessary without necessarily getting angry. So that
Yeah,
you are in control of the situation. And so once
yeah,
they get that, then I think it's just a matter of time. And we
yeah.
should give ourselves that grace. Yeah.
Grace. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. And the thing is, now that you said control, right? The moment you start shouting, let one thing click in your head, you have lost control. The moment you start raising your voice, you're no longer in control. that if you start shouting, that's a sign to you that you're no longer in control. So if that can click in your head and you realize the moment I start raising my voice, the moment I start shouting, I'm no longer in control. I want to regain my control, step back and get yourself and catch yourself again. So when I was saying the first thing you can do right now on your journey to, becoming a calm parent is organization. Organization will solve 50% of the problem that we have. And when we talk about organization, when we talk about routine, when we talk about structure, many people overthink it. They think is, knowing to the T of the tiniest details of your day. I say as a parent, especially if you have young children, it's for me, it's really I'm not a very organized person. I'm actually diagnosed ADHD. So if you know what that means I'm very disorganized. But it doesn't look like it because I'm always thinking like, what is the easiest way to get something done? So when we talk about organization, just think about it like this. Know what happens in your house in the morning. Know what happens in your house when your kids get back from school. Know what happens in your house at bedtime, right? In between can be moments of boredom, moments of independent play, moments for screen. Those ones can have their feelers, right? But know what happens in the morning when we wake up, what happens. Have the details of what happens for yourself and for them. Clarify the details to them however you want to clarify it. Conversation, visual charts, board, writing it, pasting it everywhere in the house, in the kitchen, in their room, everywhere, if that's what it will take. But let it be clearly communicated what happens in the morning, what happens when you get back from school, what happens at bedtime. That will save you a lot of problem, right? And for yourself, to make life easier for you, you also need to stay organized in yourself. And now this I'm talking about external things that you can do. I'm not even going into the internal things, external things you can do. So keep yourself organized, right? And again, when we say keep yourself organized, it looks like, oh, I have to do XYZ. Don't do too much because the problem is that when we want to do too much, then it takes the thinking and the processing takes too much energy that we end up not doing anything at all, right? So first of all, keeping yourself organized, try to get your children into bed on time, right? If you get your children into bed on time, that saves you a lot. My children, apart from the fact that today is Friday and I'm having this conversation and you know, they're waiting for me, my children will be in bed at most 8 o'clock, right? And that gives you extra 1 hour, 2 hours to decompress. Please don't use it to be pressing your phone. Extra 1 hour, 2 hours to decompress. You can use 1 hour and do something for yourself and use 1 hour to think about the next day, organize yourself. Most of the time, because we carry a lot of mental load, there are a lot of things we live in our head that we don't process, we don't deal with. It's already stress. We're thinking about, there are like 100 tabs that are open in our head. That when your child just open their mouth and say, Mommy, is already a trigger for you because there are 100 tabs open in your head. So if you're able to organize and structure your home, you're able to organize yourself. And I know parenting is overwhelming, especially if you have like a baby. But if you can get your children like 1 hour, 2 hours earlier to bed, and if they are older, they may not be in bed, but they're in their room, right? Nobody is on your case. You have that extra 1 hour, 2 hours to decompress, to organize yourself, to empty your head, and to think about how to organize yourself for the next day. It will save you a lot of, challenges, right? Then take care of yourself. Take care of yourself, right? Take care of yourself, and taking care of yourself may not look like when I say take care, I had a class on self-care recently. And when I said what is self-care, many people will say things that will cost money, right? Spa, this one, making my hair, pedicure and stuff like that. Taking care of yourself is not all of those things. Taking care of yourself can look like maybe extra 15 minutes in the shower. It can look like lying down and doing nothing. For me, many times that is actually self-care, right? Lying down and doing nothing, having extra 15 minutes before everybody wakes up, or having that extra 30 minutes to yourself before you go to bed, no noise, watching your favorite movie at your own time, at your own pace, whatever that looks like, taking a walk, speaking to your favorite person, whatever that looks like, please try and take care of yourself. Now, why am I saying this? Because these are the things that feeds into your nervous system to help it calm from the stress, and from the tension that it feels. Then when we come to communication wise, one of the things that you want to master in communicating as a parent is to learn one, monotone. And monotone is learning how to keep your voice at a tone. It's a skill that is learned, right? Learning how to, I don't know how to explain it, right? Just having a monotone, like learning how to, even though you're feeling angry, learning how to keep your voice neutral, right? So there are many times where I'm actually upset. So for example, it can be in the morning, we're trying to get ready and I'm telling them, oh, go and put your shoes on, go and wear your socks on. And they're not doing it, they're chatting or they're playing or they're doing something. And I'm like, go and put your shoes on, and I'll keep my tone like that, right? Learn monotone and learn how to say less. Learn how to have some words that are like action words for you, right? So it can be now, it can be go, it can be stop, have one word for those moments where you feel like, okay, I'm actually getting to the point, where I'm about to lose it. It can be, instead of saying multiple things, and because once that tap is opened, you can say and say and say things you're not supposed to say. So is it now or stop? Whatever that looks like for you, learn some specific words that you can use, that would help you say less in those moments, right? Then use consequences. We're going to talk a lot more about consequences when we actually talk about discipline. Use consequences, and consequences are pre-communicated, right? So in structuring your home, in having that conversation around what happens in the morning, what happens in when you're back from school, and what happens in bedtime. Those are the times where you look at, okay, these are what happens. So what happens if these things don't happen? What can we do? What would be the consequences? And if your children are old enough, have that conversation with them, come up with those consequences with them, right? And then it will be your responsibility to enforce those consequences when when the time comes. Consequences should be pre-communicated. They should be related to the behavior. So for example, if we say what happens at bedtime is that at 6 o'clock we start preparing for dinner. At 6:30 we're eating dinner. At 7:30, it's time for bed. No more devices. Everybody take away your devices. And then there's a child who is still on their device. What would the consequence for that action be? It should be related to the behavior. So being relating to the behavior would be that whatever consequences that should be associated with the device, right? So are they going to lose privilege? Are they going to have reduced hours on the device? Are you going to take away the device? What would that look like? It all depends on the age of your child, your family dynamics, and all of that. So for example, we say, oh, we do the dishes in the afternoon as soon as we come back, right? And then somebody doesn't do the dishes. What would the consequence look like? It should be related to the behavior. So does that person do the dishes for how many days for others? So if we say we do the dishes, so a typical example is we do the dishes after ourselves, right? So if anybody doesn't do the dishes after themselves, then they do every other person's dishes, right? So that's a consequence that is related to that behavior. But we'll talk more about consequences when we talk about discipline. So have consequences put in place and structured, and then take care of yourself. Those are the like things that you can do right away to help um yourself to start reducing the yelling, because you now have structure and you're doing these things to also keep yourself grounded. But the major thing is that yelling is really about the behavior. It's really like when we started this conversation, it's really about the behavior. It's really about what your child is doing. It's more about you, your capacity, and the state of your nervous system. And the major work that needs to be done is really the internal work of healing yourself, of, healing your nervous system, of doing the deep work of, you know, understanding your mind, where your mind is set, and the fears that you have. Because many times again, it's also driven by fear. It's also driven that by that fear of, am I doing enough? Am I spoiling my child? So dealing with all of those fears, all of those mindsets, and doing the healing work that is required to help your nervous system reclaim its calm. That is where the major work is. And again, that would be a different conversation altogether. But in this conversation, I've been able to give us a few things that we can start doing right now that would drastically reduce the number of times that we're yelling in a day. And like we said, give yourself grace, and your measurement of progress will not be that you suddenly woke up and there's no more yelling in your home. Your measurement of your progress could look like how frequently are you yelling? So is there reduced frequency? Is there reduced volume? So for example, it might be that before, when you start yelling, the whole neighborhood can hear your voice, but now you're yelling, but it's not as intense as it used to be. So whatever progress looks like, please acknowledge it and continue to move towards the goal, which is a time where you can happily see that I no longer yell. And if you stay consistently, and if you do everything that we're going to keep on everything that we're going to be sharing in all the conversations and subsequent conversations we'll be having, you will one day get to that point where you realize that, I used to yell 6 months ago, but now I don't think I yell as much, or I'm almost at that point where I'm not even yelling at all in a day. And I'm looking forward to when that day comes for each and every one of us. Do we have any question? Any question? Any question?
Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much, Vivian, for the talk. I got the external things, but I don't know if you mentioned the internal things to do.
Uh,
I
uh,
I I remember you talked about yelling being more about the state of your nervous system
mhm.
and all that.
Yeah.
Uh,
I did mention it, and I said it will be a different conversation um altogether in one of these series.
oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
because it's a whole conversation that we can start to unpack in a 1 hour session. Any
All
other
right. Thank
person?
you.
Yeah. Any other person? Any other question? Reflection? Um has this been helpful? Was this insightful? What did you learn? None? All right. If we don't have any other question, then we'll call it a day. And in our next conversation, we will delve deeper into what it takes to, you know, help your nervous system come into a place of rest, what kind of somatic exercises that you can do, how do you heal your mind, your inner child, and all of those works, those things that can help you actually do the inner work that is required to be more centered and more grounded. That would be our next conversation. Good. Everyone is quiet. All right. Have a
Yes,
nice
good.
Yeah, all right. Have a nice weekend, everyone, and see you next week, Friday. I feel like our Saturday classes are more vibrant. This class seems like some of you are sleeping, but it's fine. We'll see how it goes. If not, we'll bring it back on Saturday morning. All right. Take care. See you.
Bye,
Bye.
thank you.